Welcome to the podcast about investing in startups, where existing investors can learn how to get the best deal possible. And those that have never before invested in startups can learn the keys to success from the venture experts. Your host is Nick Moran, and this is The Full Ratchet.
Welcome back for another edition of Investor Stories. On this special segment, the experts describe the most important lesson that they've learned and how that has changed the way they invest. This is the special segment called Lessons Learned. On today's special segment, we have Craig Wortman of Pritzker Group Venture Capital. Craig, can you tell us a story highlighting a critical lesson that has changed the way you invest?
I think one of the lessons that I've learned before I was fortunate enough to join the Pritzker Group as a venture partner doing some angel investing, I have been working on my own point of view about the entrepreneur, him or herself. And I think on one hand, this is obvious, but it's also personal. I would fall in love with the business model and a rough sense of the product market fit. I think as I've evolved as an investor, I'm much more diligent and careful, and I have a better perspective on the entrepreneur himself or herself. And so I've just experienced myself the questions have gotten deeper and better as I learn more about the world. And of course, as I learned from the incredible team at Pritzker Group, just understanding and developing a perspective on what should I be looking for with this particular entrepreneur at this point in time. That's been a fun process. I'm still working on it, but that's been a rewarding process where you can sense that you're walking out of that first, second, third meeting with the entrepreneur with a much, much deeper sense that this is the right person or this is the wrong person.
On today's special segment, we have David Horowitz of Touchdown Ventures. David, can you tell us a story highlighting a critical lesson that has changed the way you invest?
Yeah, I mean, I'll echo a little bit of what we talked about before around kind of the whole fear of missing out. But I think there were a few times earlier in my career where just based on the dynamics of the round, we were, rushed our diligence process, maybe, didn't fully do all the work that I've even talked about on this podcast. Mm-hmm. Even as a follow-on investor, which we are, there's a tendency to rely on others' diligence. And I think the lesson learned is, you got to do your own work. I think you're also more likely to be able to make the right investments, but really even add value to the company if you really understand their business. If you don't understand their business and you haven't done that level of diligence, I doubt that you're really able to be a value-added investor. And the other thing is just appreciating how important team is. I'll give you one example. When I was at Comcast, I was, one of my colleagues, Lewis, had led an investment, and I worked with him on a company called Vitru. Very tragically, the founder of that company, who was a really great person, passed away recently, which was very sad. His name is Reggie Bradford. This was a company that had started out doing kind of user-generated video when around the YouTube time period, when that was kind of all the hype. And I just remember the strategy meetings we had both internally, externally, having doubts of whether this company was going to make it, just given, it really didn't kind of figure out how to monetize some of the technology it built. And when you look at a deal like that, you kind of say, okay, user-generated video, it's got some challenges, but part of the thesis, and I give Lewis all the credit in the world for this, was betting on Reggie as the CEO, and he had a successful exit as a CEO previously, and did a bit of a turnaround in a previous company. And this is a company that, if they couldn't figure out, what to do, was going to go out of business. And what Reggie, again, right place at the right time, he was able to pivot the company. And actually they became, along with another company that also had a successful exit called Buddy Media and Vitru became two of the biggest companies building technology to help marketers build campaigns on Facebook and social media. And that was right around the time that Facebook had opened up their platform and advertisers were adopting it. And Vitru, Reggie really steered the company in the right direction. He ended up getting acquired by Oracle for, this is a company, again, that maybe 2 or 3 years before that acquisition was, probably on the verge of going out of business. And so it's you're not trained this way when you're in college, when you're in investment banking, which I was. You're trained to think more about the markets, products, the technology. You're not trained to think about the team. And you live through experiences like this and you realize, and I can give you countless other examples, team and the culture that team build is really the number one determination of success.
On today's Investor Story segment, we have Sian Banister of Founders Fund. Cyan, can you tell us a story highlighting a critical lesson that has changed the way you invest?
Critical lesson. Looking at cap tables. That's kind of an embarrassing one.
Hey, well, it's probably useful for a lot of folks. So what about the cap table?
Yeah, I think this is more of an angel investor problem. When I was an angel investor, because right now we have legal counsel and there's that type of diligence. Our attorney does it, right? And he flags any issues that he sees. And so I don't really have that issue anymore. But I think I would have avoided a lot of issues as an investor, as an angel investor, had I understood a couple of things and done a little more diligence around cap tables and like outstanding debt. What happens is you get excited. Angel investors who are typically good can make high conviction investments in a short amount of time because you want to get in quickly. Otherwise, it becomes potentially oversubscribed and there's no room for you. So you can make a lot of mistakes. And I think that had Scott and I both really evaluated some of these diligence issues that a lot of venture firms do, we would have caught potential issues between co-founder conflicts that would come sort of emerge later on, like a mystery third co-founder that we didn't know existed.
Wow.
Things like that. Who is no longer with the company, who at some point becomes a legal liability, right? And so there's all sorts of interesting things you can tell about a cap table and how things are divvied up. And I think that in the very beginning of my investing history, I didn't spend enough time looking at that. And I think that was a pivotal point where I probably started avoiding more pitfalls by adding that to my diligence process.
Is there a quick piece of advice or a specific thing that if you come across a really compelling team working on a great problem and you love the market, but you come across a cap table, you see an issue, do you have any countermeasure or any way that, that can be addressed earlier?
I mean, you can always talk to the founder and try to get a sense of why things look the way they do and see if you can get comfortable with that or if it can be fixed. But you also have to be willing to walk away. You can't invest in everything.
Yep.
And I've just gotten to the point at this point where I'm just like, okay, that's not worth it. Recently I had a cap table issue where a fellow investor was given a very large common grant, but none of the other investors were receiving that benefit. And I ended up backing out of the deal because of that.
Interesting.
Wouldn't have caught that if I hadn't looked at, the cap table.
Sure. Yeah, we were just dealing with one today where a founder had a previous co-founder that we did some diligence with. We jumped on a call with him, and he was great and very complimentary of everything. It just, his life situation wasn't conducive to staying with the startup. But now, there's about 10% of dead cap space on the cap table, and, we're trying to figure out how do we navigate that.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes founders have really good answers for that. They come up with all of these scenarios that they can help solve that down the road. And sometimes you suss out that they're just like, well, I made this mistake and I just have to live with it. It is what it is. And you have to decide if you're comfortable with that or not. Some other founders have figured out ways of buying that back down the road amicably, which is nice. I just really wish, that's something I think, again, that's another piece of advice for angel investors. I think a lot of angel investors, some of them are moving fast and quickly and relying on social signals from other people, and sometimes may even think, gosh, there's a institutional firm that's leading this, or this other angel investor is really savvy. They must have done the diligence, so I don't need to, right?
That's right.
I think you definitely shouldn't assume that.
That will conclude this installment of Investor Stories. If you're enjoying the program and would like to see it continue, take a moment and leave a 5-star review in iTunes. Also, if you'd like updates on new content from TFR, as well as the top 10 VC articles every week, go to fullratchet.net and sign up for the newsletter. Okay, that will wrap things up for today. Until next time, over-prepare, choose carefully, and invest confidently. Thanks for joining me.